time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
Yeah! Not a fear! No fear here on Declare Your Independence. Me, Ernest Hancock, and every other week we talk to Mr. James Corbett of the Corbett Report. Say hello, James.
Hello, James. Oh,
hello,
hey.
James.
That was the old George Burns joke, right?
I'm old enough to remember.
Gracie.
See, this is the point.
Say good night, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie. This is the point. We are from a different generation or understanding to get a lot of references like that. And a lot of things that made them funny was just traditional things and values and stereotypes and all that kind of. Now, people be what? Which was kind of the point. They wanted to, change culture and norms and build a better whatever the heck it is that they wanted to do using USAID money. So, the thing is that what we're looking at, here, let me put it on both of us here. What we're looking at is trying to avoid this crap because it cycles. I'm old enough to have seen this happen, before. It goes in cycles. And we're following a trend that we're at a fork in the road, to where we can have a future of abundance and peace and prosperity and levels of standard of living that is quite unimaginable to most people, certainly around the world. Only through sci-fi did you have an understanding that this was even possible, what we have now. We used to think all we need is Star Trek, talking computers and androids and robots and communicators and, trackers and, blah, 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 blah. And then there's left warp drive replicators, holodeck. We probably got 2 out of 3, and I don't even know which ones they are. So this is the thing that the future is going to be determined by the character of the people that occupy it, that direct it, that have intention, that have will, that have capability, which with a bunch of humans on the planet, there's a bunch of them, okay? You're starting to witness it. And out of the chaos always comes a populist kind of answer, a barefoot, long-haired robe guy or something that's going to lead you into something. So who better to have this conversation with than Mr. James Corbett, the author and the director, writer, performer of Hopium. Because this really smells a lot like hopium, or is it hope? And what was it that brought it around? There was just enough people. There was just enough something that triggered it. It's what we predict with the Freedom's Phoenix, the Freedom's rebirth from the ashes of Lady Liberty's torch. So I'm going, this is important that we're going to do a longer show. Now, James gave us 2 hours, and we're going to go ahead and go at least hour and a half, whatever. We'll wrap it up whenever. We don't have to go 2 hours. We get to say what we're going to say. I suspect he's going to beg off at some point after 2.5 hours. But anyway, but the thing is that this is so important that I took to research. You look online a little bit, cultures, this, that, spare the rod, spoil the child, that kind of thing. But the moment I mentioned when we were going to do we did the predictions for 25, one of them I said, this issue is going to become a thing. Corporal punishment. Are you allowed to, how can you or can you not discipline your child. No, you can't cut your balls off. Throw him in jail. He won't let me cut my, manhood. I was like, wow, we've gone totally bat crap here. At what point does a parent control the body of the kid, and to what detriment? This is how psychopaths and stuff are made, So there's a lot of issues. I knew no better than James Corbett to have us talk about this issue. Now, we may wander off and how it relates to the crap we're putting up with now and what maybe not, but then in the future, we didn't get off that government tit, I can tell you that. So, we'll see what happens and what we learn. So, James, with that kind of background building up to this, it's all you, man. What'd you find out? Learnify me.
Well, actually, before we start learnifying, I think it's important to put down the point of agreement that I think, from what it sounds like, I think we're totally in agreement that absolutely whatever happens long-term to the human race, it really does depend on how we raise the next generation. It always has, and it always will. And that is why dictators throughout history have always known that you separate the children from the parents, or you get children to snitch on their parents, or you make sure that you control the indoctrination of the children, or you start Hitler youth groups, or those types of things in order to indoctrinate the children. We've known this for many, many centuries, that this is the way that people try to gain power in a society, is through the next generation. So what is our role as people who want free society? Clearly, we should be directing at least some non-inconsiderable part of our efforts towards Generation Next. And that's exactly why thank you again for the idea of opensourceeducation.online. I hope people will take a look at it. It's not really a thoroughgoing homeschooling curriculum. I should probably do that at some point, but at the very least, it's a way to start putting the information I'm presenting in a way that I think would be able to inform a study that children are undergoing. And as you have pointed out, reaching children at that middle school, junior high school level is incredibly important, because that is, of course, when the youngins start differentiating, start casting about, start looking at other models other than their parents, and start casting about in the wider world to find their place in it. So that is when we really need to be reaching them with a message to show that, hey, there's other things going on in this world than what your teachers are telling you, and we need to be there for those children. But also, perhaps even primarily, the first thing is our own children, because you're a parent, you're a grandparent now, I'm a parent. What we do to raise the next generation is going to determine the ways that they encounter the world, the ways that they move in the world. So it cannot be more important than that. And I think you and I are broadly in agreement on all of that stuff. Whatever happens, right? This is a generational thing, and we're not going to get to a truly free society overnight. It's going to take raising generations of freedom-loving children and that understand love and cooperation, right?
I'm of the opinion that kids surprise you. People surprise you. It's always, when you have these great reformations, you have these great changes in the fourth turnings, all this kind of stuff. It comes from need. There's a certain basic sense of justice that humanity has in living in a society that works. That's more than just a tribe or a gang. That's more than just thugs. The ranch hands out of control on the hill, and the other, 1,000 acres past the blah, blah, blah down the river. The tribe that, comes and counts coup and every now and then takes one of your women. I mean, at some point, there is I don't know if it's a societal thing. It's driven by testosterone. It's a man's place. It's how he gets little birdies, wants to come visit with him and stay in his nest and bear him children, because he'll protect them, not get them in unnecessary conflicts, but can defend against the bad guy. And then get with their neighbors, and they come and they raise a society based on mutual interest. When we start getting less decentralized and you get more centralized, you kind of, fluff off that responsibility on the school marm and the sheriff and the somebody else and the whatever, and the culture. And there's an attraction for the sociopaths. There's an attraction for it. It's not like it makes them. It's like a freaking light, attracting the moths. So, and then of course I'm sure it makes them too, but this is, I don't know that there's a government that can be my mom and dad. Sure as hell. That's going to make a law that's going to decide how and who and where. I got a gazillion stories, but I'm going to raise my children. Will that mean I do it the best way? Will I do it a harmful way? Will I do it, the dumbed down common denominator kind of freaking government way? I mean, it's who's in charge and are the parents. So if we assume the parent less than the government, we need to provide knowledge and skill on how to raise self-sufficient, qualified, eager, motivated, pro-life and living, that will provide the society you want to die in or die for. So yeah. I don't know. I got a lot of anecdotal, evidence and hearsay and whatever you want to call it. But from family and friends and guests I've had, I brought this up ever since we talked the last 2 weeks. Anybody I had a conversation with, I brought this up. Corporal punishment. What was your experience? What do you think? It was so nuanced and so individualistic, not just by family to family, by child to child in the families. It was amazing, the stories that I got, and it was always the perception that they had of what was being communicated, or if they deserved it or not, or how it goes. Yes, it changed my perspective. That was the intent. It's very effective. It's why governments do it. It's pain and pleasure. It's punishment and reward. It's incentives and subsidies. It's all this stuff. How best to do it with children, and I'm counting on James to help us out, because you're talking to the wrong guy, because I don't even have an opinion yet. Well, maybe a little bit.
It's interesting, actually, because, first thing that you are going to find in your Google search when you go to Google to get your answers about corporal punishment, of course, they're going to direct you to the bastion of truthiness, Wikipedia. And I found it interesting that the Wikipedia entry starts with the sort of standard definition. A corporal punishment or a physical punishment is a punishment which is intended to cause physical pain to a person. When it is inflicted on minors, especially in home and school settings, its methods may include spanking or paddling. When it is inflicted on adults, it may be inflicted on prisoners and slaves, and it can involve methods such as whipping with a belt or horsewhip. So, I mean, there is a continuum that seems to exist between the concept of ownership of people in one way or another. And I think this is probably where we start to get into things. Now, okay, we can start citing studies and what have you with regards to the outcomes, the measured outcomes of children in various situations. But you know how that goes.
Yeah, I know.
You can find does this, and this study says that, and how did they do this, and blah, blah, blah. I would say there is at the very least, there is a body of literature showing that there is definitely a link between psychiatric disorders of various sorts and mental health outcomes and childhood corporal punishment. So, an example, Canadian Medical Association Journal, Slapping and Spanking in Childhood and its Association with Lifetime Prevalence of Psychiatric Disorders in a General. Blah, blah, blah. But as I say, I don't think the studies are going to convince anyone of anything in this point, because as you say, everyone has their anecdotes with regards to this. But that's why anecdotes are also not going to convince anyone, because I've heard, from many, many people throughout my life, well, I was spanked and I turned out okay. Well, okay, good to hear that. I wasn't spanked and I turned out okay. Stalemate. Who's going to win this argument, right? It's almost like people are individual human beings, and perhaps different people will respond to different stimulus in different ways. But even disregarding that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Finish your thought. I wanted to ask you a question.
No. Go ahead. Interject whenever.
What do you think? Oh, you know what that? Yeah, I go. When did you realize that you were better off having not been corporal punishment, and there was something else that just, or were you just a good kid? And if you were a good kid, why were you a good kid? You see my point?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we got to make a bunch of James Corbetts.
Well, how can I possibly answer these questions? Because what would I have been like if I had been spanked? I don't know. I don't know. And why was it not seen as something that needed to be done to me? Yeah. I mean, as far as kids go, I'm sure I was not the worst kid that ever existed, and I didn't throw tantrums all the time and what have you. So, there is an element of this that people are going to say, yeah, well, that kid is just a temperamentally good kid for the most part, doesn't need to be spanked. But this kid is a troublemaker and needs to be spanked.
Were you an only child?
No, I had two brothers. And my brothers were spanked as children. By the time they got around to me. Well, the way my parents tell it, the way that by the time they got around to me, they kind of knew how to parent. They knew more about parenting and what they were doing. Also, Yes, I'm the youngest, yes. So, also, my parents had become Christian by that point, and that had profoundly affected their lives and their outlook and the way they treated other people. So I think by the time they got to me... But yeah, I remember my mom used to tell a story about a time when I guess my two older brothers, I don't think I even was born yet, or maybe I was just a baby, but my two older brothers, they'd been preparing to go out somewhere, wherever, I don't know, church or somewhere, and they were all dressed up nicely, right? My brothers went outside to play, and they went and played in the garden and were digging it up and getting all muddy and dirty. And when my mom saw this, she got so angry, and she spanked my oldest brother with a wooden spoon or whatever, until it literally broke. And my mom told this story to me as I was a child, like with tears, like, oh my God, that's when I realized, what am I doing? This is horrible.
James, and don't release the beast.
It never happened to me, put it that way. Yeah, well, this is the point. So of course people will say, well, yeah, that's not the way you're supposed to do it. It's supposed to be not in anger. You explain calmly what's happening and why it's happening, and it's a different thing when you do it, when it's not in an angry state. But all of this, I mean, again, everyone has their stories and their anecdotes, but I think this has to come down to, at some point, principles. And
okay, now before you get to that, before you get to I know we got a delay. I apologize. Before you get to the principle, because that's what I want to build up to. I want to hold that off with this one premise. Okay.
Sure.
When you said that, you're told this story. I mean, this story of, oh man, until the spoon broke.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 15, you're like, whatever. If you're like anywhere up to 11, 12, 10, you're like, damn, that has an impact on you. And it reminded me of one of the young men I was talking to that's a father, and I know their family and parents, all that kind of stuff. He talked about it's time to do the laundry. And what that meant is his dad would take him into the laundry room, he'd take off his belt, and he had all these things around the wall, chainsaws and whatever the hell were hanging, and he'd get in there and he'd, kind of give him a talking to, and he'd just start beating everything on the walls. It was like there was a freaking, what the hell, there's a saloon fight going on, right? So he goes, now you understand what's going on, what you did's wrong, all that kind of stuff, right? Now, there, the word said what happened in here. You understand me? Boom. And he'd go. Didn't talk, siblings knew not to ask, and nobody told. It was just kind of, so he never actually struck him. But my thing was the impact it had on the other kids. The impact it had on him, the relationship, whatever. Is it the intimidation, followed up by, whip your butt or have in the past or whatever. But just the story can have an impact. It's always the principle with the holes in the paddle crap. You see my point? So that's a form of discipline. We're kind of skipping over that. So the force and threat of force. So the principle would be...
that's a good point. I think... to me, rather than a complete difference in kind, I think that that's a spectrum. It's a continuum. And I think that they are part and parcel of the same thing. I think the threat of violence, a serious and credible threat of violence, can be as emotionally impactful and can have the same type of emotional impact as actual physical use of violence. So yes. And from that perspective, I would say that then that isn't really a different thing. If you're going to reject the use of violence against children, I think that would include threats of violence, coercion, intimidation in that sense as well.
You know, the one thing that, you know, when I did some research and I just wanted to know what word corporal punishment and the first thing, they don't even get down to sending you to Wikipedia until the AI tells you to all the other crap of something. But it was almost all in support of the collective. It was all military corporal punishment. You know, corporal punishment in the courts, getting caned in Singapore, you know, I guess head lopped off is kind of the ultimate corporal punishment. But, you know, this was kind of the theme that they had, that it was making you a good drone, a good part of the collective, a good, you know, in society by this here stick. And for that to be transcend, I don't want anyone forbidding a parent's right to discipline their children. To see, how do you say physical or emotional harm? I mean, you know, that's so gradient from their perspective. But I don't want to give it to the freaking government, you know? And it has to be a society. It has to be knowledge. It has to be, you determine that that's their interest to raise good little whatever the hell, because it's their culture or their family or their... And that's one thing that I found in talking to a lot of people. When I found out that, you know, in almost all the cases, the level of corporal punishment or lack thereof or whatever the heck they did was so different between siblings. And it's like what you said. The younger ones got the message way before the first ones did. And that set the culture. And I'm just trying to equate that to what happens in this country as time goes on. What we're doing. Jay Noon just called. You know, he's going to Acapulco, speaking about a lot of this stuff, screen time, kids, dopamine, all this kind of stuff, man camp and everything, with Joel Salatin down there. And we're going to be doing shows from the speakers and so on. He'll be coming and staying here, you know, at the end of February or March. And, no, end of February, because we got a party thing 1st of March. And he is doing videos, he always has, of his kids. Now, his kids are like 2.5 and 4 or something like that. You know, Cassatius, Lukash, and Cypress, his daughter. And they're always got a drill or a, you know, grinder or a, you know, something in hand helping dad do whatever the whole time. And they homeschool, but these guys are way before school. This is what he's speaking on in Acapulco. And I can see it starting to saturate my life now that we have some hopium in us, that we can build a better society. You got to have the people to do it. Just saying, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you raise a status versus how do you raise a free human being, I guess, is an incredibly important part of this question, isn't it?
Yep.
All right. Why is his name escaping me? Who is the guy who took over the Anarchast podcast from Berwick?
Smith.
Yes. Patrick Smith? Is that right?
Yeah, Patrick Smith, I think. Yeah.
Well, that guy.
Right.
Sorry. Brain fart moment.
I'm not
anyway,
sure if he does it anymore.
I know that.
I don't know, but not if it's recent. But yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Before about yeah, you know who I'm talking about. I know he has told before about his parenting techniques and his parenting methods, and truly zero force parenting, truly zero force, and the way that he has structured his entire parenting interaction with his children in order to bring that about, so that everything is negotiation, and that he absolutely makes it as clear as possible to his children as it can be made. Your body is yours. No one does anything to you. You never allow anyone to do anything to you that you do not want, that you do not consent, and that everything is a negotiation. And that is, I mean, that's the radical extension of the farthest, part of this that I don't know how many parents are really ready to go that far. I think I need to talk to Patrick Smith.
Well, how else you do it? How you do it?
More about that, because that is a very interesting idea. But that is the far end, right? And then the far other end is I'll beat my children if they talk out of line. And most people exist somewhere in between that, right?
Do you really think negotiating with
a
child is that far out? See, I would think, because that is all I do with a few of my grandkids. I mean, I got a bunch of grandkids. I'm telling you, some of them are a little smart. They know exactly what's going on. It's always the younger ones, they get it, But
yeah.
So by the time
that's another important point, actually. I need to say this. You are so right about children are way smarter than we give them credit for. We tend to put them in their little pigeonhole, their little boxes. Oh, it's a child. What is it? What do they know? No, they know, and they absolutely are learning from you, the way they see you interacting in the world, the things that you do. They are learning from everything you do. And that was really, really nailed home to me when my son was, I think, 2, maybe 3 years old. I remember we were driving, me and my wife, and he was in the back seat. We were driving somewhere at some point, and I took some route that my wife is like, no, go that way. This way is going to take so much longer. And so so we were arguing back and forth about which route to take.
So you say all these stories, and I got to translate.
We speak a weird Japanese/English mix, so it's probably something like that. But anyway, so we were arguing back and forth about it, and then from the back seat, my boy was the voice of reason. I swear to God, I think he was 2 years old, might have been 3. Anyway, he was like, well, this time you can go this way, and next time you can go the other way, and then we can see which one is better, or something like that. And it was the way he explained it, and there was no problem, there's no conflict, there's no reason to get angry. He saw exactly right through what was going on, and just had, and I was so humbled by my 2-year-old boy being the voice of reason in that conversation. Anyway, children know, and they are watching, they are learning, and they see, and they absolutely see. And honestly, I had one of the greatest moments in my parenting career so far recently with my boy. He was now 10 years old.
Do tell.
11 years old. 11 years old. I remember, don't worry. And he said to me recently, we were talking, and he said something like, oh, when I grow up, I don't think I even want to drink beer. I want to be like you, Papa, because I don't drink. And it's not even that in particular. It's just that I know he is looking to me as a model for how to live in this world. And I'm no saint. I'm no perfect guy, but
he'll tell you about it when he's 13. Just wait for that.
Well, yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I know. And that is a normal part of human development, and different cultures have had different ways of doing that in the past. Various cultures have always had that initiation ritual of some sort, crossing the threshold.
That was one thing that I didn't find. When I looked up, I go in rites of passage. You gotta, chew the heart out of a live wolf or some crap.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
So I'm this is it was so common in our history to delineate between boyhood and manhood. And it was, in books and novels and, are you worldly yet? Are you starting to show pubic hair and so on? Then you're worldly. It can't be changed, because that's one thing I tell new parents, okay, just get used to this idea. Whatever you raise up until the time the hormones start, that's what you get, okay? That's their default position. It takes way more effort and trauma and whatever to change their default position, the kind of way they act. So what you raise a good kid up to that point, That's when it matters.
I agreed. And I think that goes back to your letter of marque about training the AI intelligence, right? What
ethics matter,
what we are feeding into the AI models is what is going to come back in some form. So if we are teaching them about genocide and empire and conquest and colonialism and all this horrible stuff, that's what's going to happen when the AI takes over, right? But if we're teaching them about cooperation and love and how we can work together on various things, then hopefully that's what we get back, right? At any rate, I don't know if that's going to be true with the AI godhead, but I think it is true with children. And I think that's an incredibly important part of all of this.
It goes...
But okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I forgot already. I did make some notes here. I want to do. When you were talking, there was something that reminded me about men. Anyway, I wrote down the Bud Light commercial. Have you seen the new Bud Light commercial? The new Bud Light commercial.
Oh no, I heard about it. Yeah.
It's all white men, and couples. It's like old days where the racial mixture is based on the demographics of the united population of whatever the hell, right? And I'm just like, oh my God, that's going to take.
And it's Shane Gillis, right? Shane Gillis is in that, and
yeah, I think
he was the guy. I remember he was on Saturday Night Live for like 1 week or something, or he was going to be on Saturday Night Live, but then they canceled it because I can't remember. He said something that
this
was,
commercial has
my
deeper
God,
meaning.
it was like a racial joke or something. Yeah, I think so. I think it's like, uncanceled is the theme for the coming years.
Man,
maybe.
Did we predict that was going to turn on a dime someday? I mean, this too shall pass. All right. I'm going somewhere with this. The Trump administration spokesperson, press secretary, whatever her name is, Barbie doll, competent, kicks butt, does whatever. Wow, that was okay. She runs a tight ship, gets stuff done. We're enthusiastic and all that. She wears a cross, and we have somebody up there for young women to model themselves after. That's in the know that where supposedly and then Pam Bondi, all this kind of stuff. So, but they're all white blonde women, and I'm going. Generation Next should look up to what kind of person. Then you get government representative people enacting policies of force, but doing it with style. And I'm going, there is a something more fundamental than mirroring your child or someone else after a sports hero or a political hero or celebrity hero or a pop hero or something like that. It used to be comic books, Truth, Justice, and A Better Tomorrow. Now they change it, So this is all this culture stuff that feeds into the minds of people. Are we to be ever vigilant in trying to have the kids understand people with political power must be watched? Anyone with influence must be watched more carefully. And how do you do that at a young age with what you do and the children you have?
Yeah. Sorry, we're getting a bit of stutter and feedback here. But okay. No, it's an incredibly important point. And look, in all of this conversation, I hope no one thinks I'm putting myself on a pedestal. I don't think... let's put it this way. When my children are grown up and successful adult human beings, then I can start to say, I did a great job. But until then, it's pretty easy before they're teenagers, right? Anyway, but having said that, this is an incredibly important question about the cultural understandings, the things that they are learning, how to protect them from the indoctrination, right? And my principled viewpoint on all of that has always been, I am not here to teach my children what to think. I am here to teach them how to think, because that's the only thing that's going to get them through not just the world as it exists today, but the world as it exists 20 years from now, 30 or 50 years from now, a world I can't even possibly envision and probably won't be around to see. I have to somehow prepare them for all of that. That's not going to happen if I teach them this is the way it works. This is the reality, and you have to believe this. It can only work if I teach them how to examine and critically think about various subjects. And how do you start doing that in an appropriate, age-appropriate way is a big question. And I am still not at the point of teaching them, you shouldn't like the police and,
right,
screw the cops, stupid piggies, and all that kind of stuff. I'm not teaching my children that mindset yet. But I am, hopefully, I think I'm trying to introduce them to the idea that no matter what uniform they're wearing or what hat or what badge or what it says, that doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean they're good people.
Shiny badges don't grant special rights.
Exactly. That's that's the concept I'm trying to bring.
And there are
interesting ways.
I'm sorry. I got to tell you this one story. Mark Victor is a criminal defense attorney. A good friend. We partnered in Freedom Summits over a decade and stuff. And he had small children. When they were really small, next door to them lived a policeman. Okay. Well, they had him babysitting them one day. He said, "Yeah, I'll babysit the kids. Whatever. I'm a policeman. You can trust me." But anyway, so they were friends. So he goes over, babysitting the kids, and they're reading a little book. And he says hi to the fireman. Oh, wave to the fireman. Oh, say hi to the policeman. And they go, "We don't talk to police." And I go, "Okay." So how'd that go? He goes, "Well, I'm a policeman, so they're just like, didn't know what to do. Dad said don't talk to policemen." So it was, and that has an impact. And I remember one time my grandmother, she was all mad at, because the police stopped her because she had too heavy a tent in her windows. I mean, I guess they had tinted windows back in the 60s, early 70s. And it was a thing. Yeah. And I'm just like, the policeman did something bad. Yeah, what do they care? I go, so because they can't see in? She goes, no, it's because they say because you can't see out. So these little bitty things, little factoids, resonate with a young person, their perception later on. But is that taught? Is that part of the culture? It's like, Mark, we don't talk to policemen. She tell them what the police did something bad to my grandma. It's kind of, so you can't. There's so many butterfly wings going off in a person's life, along with their personality, and what disciplines them. And what I'm thinking, especially after talking to you, is that, the younger kids that get it, like my little sister getting near what I got. I mean, so I'm just thinking, is an age thing in the sibling line? Does that have a big impact? Is there a study for that?
Yeah, there is definitely, I think, an aspect of that. And it makes sense to me, as my parents said, by the time we got around to you, we knew what we were doing. And I think there is some aspect of that probably, I would like to think, at least most average parents who are at least trying their best, right? Not going to be perfect, but they're trying their best. They'll probably get better at it the more experience they have doing it. So I could imagine younger siblings would tend to be easier in a sense. Yeah, Having said that, okay. Yes, one important thing of what you brought out there is that more so, I think, than you sitting down and lecturing children about, okay, so this is what you should think about police, or this is what you should do in this situation. No, more so than that, they are watching what you actually do, the way you react to various things that are going on. Children, I think, have two main influences. One is that outside culture of parents, teachers, TV, politicians, sports heroes, all of that outside stuff that's coming in that you can't protect your children from unless you put them in a little bubble. And who's going to do that? That's a form of abuse in itself, I think. But they have those two influences. There's that outside influence, and then there's your influence. And your influence is more so, again, than what you're telling them. It's the way that you are interacting with that outside influence. And they are watching for how you react. When you get pulled over by the policeman, how do you react to that? Or whatever, a million different situations. And keeping that in mind, I think, honestly, I think the most important part of parenting is being the model. Now, okay, let's start to get to the real core hard issues on this, because it is not, yeah, nuanced is probably the right word, because I don't think there is some magical perfect solution to any of this, but it comes down to principles. And what is the core libertarian principle that from which everything else comes as a natural expression? Go back to that video I always talk about, whose name I can never remember. What was it called? The cartoon Foundation of Liberty, whatever,
Oh, Philosophy of Liberty.
Philosophy of Liberty. There you go. Comes down to the core fundamental idea: you own yourself. You own your body, you own your life, you own your time, self-ownership. That is the foundational principle. Everything else flows out as a result of that. So that means, governments can't come in and tax me or throw me in prison and blah, blah, blah. All of that comes from self-ownership. I own myself. So here's the real rub. Does that self-ownership start from day one? Is an absolute brand new born baby, does that baby have self-ownership? And if so, what does that mean for a baby that can't do anything for itself? Like, what does that even mean? Does it develop? Is that something that they grow into? Is there a magical dividing line? 18 years old, suddenly you own yourself. Before that point, your parents own you. I think ownership
my parents
is
go whacking my
clearly
circumcising me. I'm claiming ownership. I'm going. You go whacking me.
Right.
Not me now. You had your chance.
Yeah, but this is really the thing, right? So ownership is clearly. I understand why non-libertarians have the problem when you bring up the concept of self-ownership, because you can't own a human being. Even yourself? I understand why people have a problem with that concept, because at the point, for example, of children, do they own themselves? What does it mean to own your body? And does that mean, for example, I'm a parent sitting there watching my child running out into traffic about to get run over, but I don't own his body, so I can't stop him from getting run over? No, of course, right? Everyone understands at some point, in some way, parents have custodial ownership over their children's bodies until they can function on their own. What does that mean? What are the limits of that? How do we decide that? There are clearly cultural limits that we place along those things, as well as what is the foundational principle limits that we can place on that? How do those things interact? And that's where you start to get into the really Exactly, right. Yeah. No, the community owns your children. So here's the thing. I guess the question is, what is the question? The question has to do with how we as a community, I guess, decide when, how, where, who has the right to step in between the parent and the child when abuse is taking place. Because that clearly, everyone knows there is child abuse. Whatever you think of spanking or whatever, there is genuine, real, honest to God child abuse. And I don't know any normal non-psychopathic. I don't know any non-psychopathic person who doesn't want to intervene in that in some way, right? I mean, if a child is being abused, if you see a child being abused on the street, you're going to go and do something
for government. The government doesn't care.
Exactly. Right. So here's the thing. Because just as natural human beings, don't think about the state yet, just as natural human beings, we know there is child abuse, and we, as normal, functioning non-psychopaths, want to intervene in that. That impetus is, of course, used by the state. Oh, okay, yes, we all care. We all love the children. So the state has to come in and make sure that you're not abusing your children. And, what results from that? Ultimately, CPS, and the government can come in and take your children.
Well, the United Kingdom was going that far. There was something just in the last few years, you had, them coming and checking, making sure you're doing it right, whatever, in your home. And I'm going, what the crap? I mean, they try everything. 1984 is like a, I don't know, like a, you know, a comic book they're trying to follow or something. So it's, but what do you think is, we're getting into the second hour, and I want to make sure we kind of focus on some guidelines, solutions, something. See, the guidelines. What I mean, the rule one, first, don't be a dick. I mean, that's kind of. But a lot of times, certainly as a young parent myself, Donna and I were married in August, and the following September we had our first child. Then we had 3 more. We're going for 4 under 4, and we had a miscarriage on the 4th child, and then we had our 5th pregnancy, 4th child, Sierra. So there was a point, here they come, man. Boom, I got me some youngins. Okay, well, I know how my mom and dad did it. We can get this done with the intent on, raising a good human being. We did fine, and we had other friends that were close that did different ways and what they were exposed to and not, and how, and it was, we all of us parents, we knew it was an experiment, in the high schools and so on. It was a private school, so we're just like, I don't know how that, some will go through divorces, some that, all these things had such an enormous impact on every individual kid in so many different ways, and the only common denominator that I saw that was the most beneficial thing was love of family, friends, community, that they were supported. Whatever happened, they felt not abandoned. They felt safe. They felt nurtured. They felt, their lifeline, it was this support structure, and it was just time that was going to heal whatever. And I think that is the most successful children that I know knew they had that net. There's some sense in security or self-reliance. I don't know, what's the word? I don't know, what would you put? It's a breeding ground for human beings to flourish. What is that breeding ground?
Well, what you say there resonates so strongly with me, because for myself, where I doubted for even a fraction of a second that my parents loved me and were there to support me. I had a loving, supportive family and a supporting home. And I think that is absolutely the base bedrock ground material that is needed to build any sort of structure on top of. And it is, if I don't like trying to give parenting advice to people because it just seems so pretentious. I mean, my kids are so little, right? But if I had any advice for sort of a brand new parent, I would say,
how old are your children?
You're a human. You're going to get frustrated. Sorry?
How old are your children? So people have a perspective.
My children are 11. My boy is 11. My girl is 8. So, still young.
Best
still
time.
In the cute. Yeah, exactly. I'm well aware that when they hit teenagers and the hormones start acting up, that's when real parenting kicks in, right? But no, for a brand new parent, I would say you are human. You are going to get frustrated. Things are going to happen, whatever. But at the very, very least, if you absolutely, truly, really do love your children and you want what's best for them and you make that known to them, I think that is... whatever, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to do bad things, whatever. But at the very, very least, that bedrock of just security, of knowing, letting your children know they are loved and you are there for them, that is the most important thing by far. And I would say differences in parenting styles and what have you can, whatever, that's the details. But the bedrock is just the love and support. And I think you're right about that. And it's not just from the parents, obviously, a community, a greater community, if such a thing can be found.
When we, before we moved on the land, when we had our place, we would have family parties that easily be 40 people. It's just, because there's so many, and they're friends, whatever, relatives, nieces, nephews, kids of theirs. It's amazing. Each parent had their own challenges of what kind of kid, the different ages of whatever. And a lot of stresses over many holidays over decades, raising these kids and kind of them, whatever. it was obvious to me that each family had a different way of doing it, not necessarily supportive and endorsed by the rest of the family. But nobody said nothing, except maybe Grandma. Grandma was allowed to talk to people, and, really, I mean, I think that's, you're traumatizing the kid, man. And it was, whatever damage was done, you could see have certain effect. And a lot of it was emotional and psychological kind of stuff, as opposed to, just calling, don't be so stupid, that kind of stuff. But it would be so powerful to them for Grandma to take care of business. Just be supportive of them. You can talk to me. I know, she was my kid, and he was, and she was, that kind of thing. And what happens, that support structure changes everything. And you can see that goes into having a competent adult that is not damaged to where they can't be a competent adult. There has to be some positive role model perspective, this too shall pass thing, which definitely happens. We're going through the teenage thing. They're doing fine. They're great. They're way better than, you can hope for, in my opinion. But, we haven't got the mass of them all teenagers yet. So that's going to be a thing. But I think that support structure, and how many generations, how many people, and does it need to be family, community, ideology, church? It comes from what's the most effective thing. And if you don't have something, you don't have a nuclear family, you don't have siblings, you're a single kid to a, graveyard shift nurse, single mom, that whatever, what are you looking to get for that child to have them have a chance psychologically as a productive adult? These are why I ask so many questions of, big names that I interview, and I go, I want to know everything. I want to introduce you to the audience. What was your first memory? What happened? Your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, your teacher, your coach, your music instructor. Who made you even care about this issue? Why was this? What made you this person? You got talent and you do this thing and that, for freedom. And why? What's the secret sauce? So that's what I'm hoping Mr. James Corbett can help us kind of imagine the secret sauce, of which, like you're saying, the support structure. Is there anything else essential?
Well, what this is bringing to mind, actually, is, again, from my own personal anecdote experience, with my family. My brothers, both of my brothers, had all sorts of problems in their teenage years and whatever, the whole gamut, trying to run away from home and all that kind of stuff, and crazy stuff that happened. We all turned out okay, but there was some crazy times there. And I remember at some point it occurred to me that, again, what my parents were saying, we learned all the mistakes with your brothers. That's why there was less mistakes with you. It was a fight between my parents and my older brothers. Not a fight, but like there was always the arguments and sort of the conflict on various issues. I remember my parents were convinced that my brothers was listening to heavy metal and this is terrible for you, so they took all his records away and all this kind of stuff, and they'd have fights over this. By the time it got to me, as they say, they'd learned their lessons. They knew not to fight. There was one point when I came home, I dyed my hair green. Back when I had hair, let alone to dye it green. And my parents, if my older brothers had done that, it would have been a huge fight. No, you're not doing this. We're gonna. But with me, it was just like they looked at it and went, "You doing this now? Really? Okay." And it just, okay, whatever. We love you. We're here for you. It's your choice.
I think it's more than that. I think they trusted your judgment.
But that's the thing. I always had the sense that they trusted my judgment. It was never a question. It was never an argument. It was never, they truly did. Okay, I might disagree, and I think you're gonna learn your lesson, but you do this thing. But I always knew they were there for me, and that combination of elements I think, of course, you're a teenager, you're going to do stupid things. You get it out of your system.
Ability to experiment.
You realize your parents are there for you. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's part of differentiation between yourself and your parents. It's a normal part of life. As we've said, there used to be rites of passage. Now, what are the rites of passage that children go through? Now they just do stupid things in their teenage years and hopefully live through them and learn from them. And but it was that underlying sense that I had that, yeah, my parents truly did trust me to trust you. This is up to you. This is your decision. We're going to be here to support you. We might disagree with it, but we're here to support you. And that was the safety net that I think allowed me to become who I am.
A lot of the traits that each of us share comes from these types of experiences and way of looking at yourself and so on. And one of them that I remember, I was 18. It was the end of my senior year in high school. I'm 18. I'm not coming to school today because I'm not coming to school today. But I was a good student, honor student, student council, 4-year letterman, that kind of crap. So they didn't have a hate for me, but I was kind of, bottom on the totem pole of the jock popular kids. I wasn't, like way up there. I was on the list, but way down on the list. And it was just, due to my own insecurities and loudmouth, whatever. And it was, to me, the real benefit I got from growing up was my friends. They were all really good, moral, decent people from decent families. They went to. I chose wisely. I wanted to be I wanted to be friends with these people. I wanted to go to the parties with these people. I wanted to date these people. And it was definitely a choice because I didn't care what their accomplishments were, but they were accomplished people. And most of us were from the same elementary school that came up, in a newer neighborhood. And it was. So friends, I want you to spend some time on your associates and friends that had an impact on you.
It's an excellent point. And in fact, what I immediately think is this is another thing that we should probably stress to parents is that, what's that called? Oh my God. There's the Star Trek term for it. But sometimes you can do
Prime Directive,
everything right and still lose, right? It isn't, you are not the 100% sole complete determinant of your children's lives, right? There are going to be factors that you cannot possibly control, one of which might simply be their friends, who they come in contact with, and the people that they meet throughout their life who will impact them and influence the way that they are in ways that you cannot control. There are certain things you cannot calculate. So if you fall in with the wrong crowd, it might be significantly harder to become a normal functioning human being. I never fell in with the wrong crowd. If we're talking rungs on the totem pole, I was certainly never the popular kid in class, but I was never the one that was like picked on. I was just kind of in between somewhere. And so I
felt
had
picked
my
on.
Friends that I fell in with.
I felt picked on. I was redhead, freckled, freaking man, bottom of the totem pole. Let's go get some Ernie. Plus, these being, we hate him because we hate him, whatever. But I tell you this story. I got on an airline. It was Southwest Airlines or something, going back from Arizona to Pennsylvania, where Donna was for something. And I was 22, 23, and my dean of students was sitting right next to me. And I always had to go to the office for him, getting in the fight. But everybody started, it's just like I was low on the web, just being really trying to make a name. So it was, and he goes, "I know it's you, Ernie." And I go, "Damn." And he goes, I never had any person get in as many fights and not get expelled or even suspended because all those kids, they had it coming. They're all he had. And the one thing that you learn when you get in high school and the peers and the pressures that you are under is, one, how to not piss off people and how to act and not be a jerk. But the big thing is what is acceptable, what's tolerable, what's pushed, what's vogue for the time. These influences, this is what you're talking about when it's out of the parents' control. And it's created a place by this mandatory youth indoctrination camp that they got some vendor coming in to sell the whatever sugar water that they got and the crap in the, cafeteria of something that makes you whatever. And then you have all of these other influences that they're not there to protect or help. So government schools, early on, our oldest was in 3rd grade, and I said, hell no. Long story, hell no. We're getting out of this. So what do you do? Don't know? Not this, okay? So eventually he wound up in private schools, but it was at a sacrifice. And it was no sacrifice for what I knew was going to happen if I left him there. So the environment. What environment are you suggesting, or your research you're thinking, in education, daycare, where who are you going to hand them off to? Uncle Sam, some other government dictator to raise for you? What education? Talk about it.
I hate the concept of daycare or nursery care, at least for brand new children. I don't know. So I have not had children in Canada, so I don't know what it's like, let alone what it's like in the past 20 years since I left Canada. But, I watch movies where, the mother has a baby and like 3 weeks later, dropping them off at daycare to go back to work. That just boggles my mind. Here in Japan, at least, my wife got a full 1 year off for each of our children. And I can't imagine a mother not being there with her child for the first year. It just, if it can be done, I think that is clearly the better way to form bonds with your children at the very least, right?
They started talking to...
Okay, schooling, education.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, education, man. That's the original question. I want you to go. You're about ready to answer and tell them.
Yes, schooling. Okay. Yeah, schooling, education. All right. Well, this is like the anecdotes that we could all tell of, well, I got spanked and I turned out okay. Well, I didn't get spanked and I turned out okay. Well, I went to public indoctrination schools and I turned out okay, right? Well, I didn't go to public indoctrination schools and I turned out okay. So, again, there's some element of the personal individual response, but clearly it is better to avoid the indoctrination system to the extent possible, or at least prolong your children's or delay your children's exposure to it. Having said that, I'm realistic about the ability for parents to really shelter their children from all these outside cultural influences. So I am not of the opinion that public education system is the some horrible thing that children will never recover from. But if you are able to homeschool, I certainly would not be against that idea. I think that's probably the better way to do it. Having said that, we don't homeschool. Our children go to private school. So there is, I
don't know. Private Japanese schools might have some canes. I mean, they're like samurai swords, Bushido whacking you upside the head.
Yeah. No, I have heard stories here from the public schools, actually, of teachers being quite violent and abusive, sometimes physically, certainly screaming and what have you. But actually, my experience, so it definitely, absolutely, like probably anywhere else in the world, it varies by region, and there are, poorer areas and richer areas, and obviously you're going to have different school experiences depending what area you live in. But my experience teaching in the public school system here is that discipline, the authoritarian mindset is completely different in Japan than it was me growing up in Canada. In Canada, it is the teacher is clearly the authority figure controlling over the entire class. And that is the only form of discipline that exists in the Canadian public school system, at least the one I grew up in. In Japan, it is a much more horizontal discipline structure. And that's baked into the cake in every aspect of the way schools are run, the way classes are structured. For example, they will break children. So you got the class of 25, 30 students, whatever it is. They will be broken up into groups of various sorts. And groups will generally get an activity, and it is up essentially to each group to police each other. If there's somebody who's not doing it right, or somebody who's, slacking off or something, it is up to the group to essentially discipline that other person, so that when they won't all suffer as a result of it. Essentially, there's a lot more of that sort of horizontal policing that goes in, which is why I think you end up with the Japanese culture of the hammer that sticks up will get nailed down. There's more of an awareness of not being a burden on others. There's more of the honor culture. It's baked into the cake at every level of society, and it starts from school. Children are taught to police each other.
Now what does that
more
make?
So than the authority figure at the front.
But that kind of culture, that country, that exactly what you're talking about right there. Generation Next in Japan, this makes what? Less innovation, more collective, solutions that have collective problems that goes, and then this dating thing and marriage and low birth rates and so on, because they're not as chemicaled up as we are. It's by choice. There's some dynamic going on. So when you look at poor communities and you say they're poor, they may not think they're poor, say they don't have any McMansions, and they don't have any bills, and they sit on the porch, and they work hard 4 hours a day, and they raise their kids. So, I mean, who's you? As long as they're not burdened on you, what do you care, So happiness is their pursuit as a cultural thing. I can see that it's going to produce, like the Jewish culture might produce a whole bunch of bankers. I mean, I don't know, lawyers and whatever. It's just a cultural thing. Or the Chinese, are they inherently smarter? Are they just, genetically, maybe a little bit, but damn, they got the, domination in certain math skills.
Or the Tiger Mom, right?
Yeah, there's this support structure, and you're going to be the best, athlete of whatever, because I have to bop you up back of your head, you're 3. That's what's going to happen. So
well, there you go. I mean, that's an interesting thing for us to drill down on, because there is clearly some level of correlation. Maybe it's not strict causation, but there is some level of correlation between the stereotypical, archetypical Tiger Mom idea of the hyper competitive Asian parents who are going to make sure that their child, is the number one in class. If you're not getting straight A's, you're grounded for the rest of your life or whatever. And incredible pressure is put on them to become doctors and engineers and whatever. Clearly, that seems to succeed to some extent. I mean, if you just look at, for example, the relative success rates of Asian Americans, first generation, so born in America, but their parents are from Asia, and they have these things drilled into them that the parents are 100% pushing them in these directions, and they generally tend to do better on test scores and tend to become engineers and professionals and whatever at higher rates than the population. So I guess you could say, well, there you go. So, strict parents being absolutely, driving their children like slaves to succeed, it makes for better children, right?
No,
but how do you measure that? And then
exactly. This is what I was writing down. You made me think of something. It was I remember I had a trail bike when I was like 13, 14, and me and my friends, we'd rip it up, man. We were out doing. My dad went with us one time, took us out in the desert, and he started like, "Holy crap, on this lead sled you're doing." So he buys me an RM 125 racing bike. But I gotta be the best, and he bapping me up back of the head with my helmet on, but still, I didn't like it. And bam, you took that turn like a wuss. Get down. Oh, yeah, you want to see? And of course, I do it faster or whatever. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about with being, it was like a Marine drill sergeant kind of thing. Do I appreciate that? I learned something about myself, but, it didn't make him a hero, So, and I'm like, I didn't do that, Mike, because the goal was fun, not being a champion. What's the goal of the parent?
Yes. You like learning from movies and things. I know you're always making references. Have you seen Whiplash?
I can't say that I have. It seems so familiar. Can you tell me what it's about?
It's about a drumming student at a jazz college in the U.S. who wants to be the best jazz drummer, essentially.
But he doesn't read music?
If that doesn't ring a bell, you haven't seen it. Because, well, he does. Okay, I don't think you've seen this movie. I think you should see this movie because it is exactly this point. The question of what it takes to be, literally, to be the greatest. It's called Whiplash. Whiplash. The question of what it takes to be the greatest and whether that is worth it. And it is about this teacher-student relationship dynamic. It is about all these questions. Yeah. Right. What does it mean to be happy and to live a good life versus being the best? It's very much related to
the victim of the tiger mom. Yeah, no. Well, it's like
being a victim. Being a victim of abuse, and in this case, it is definite abuse that is going on, but it is not physical abuse. But there is absolute abuse going on between the teacher and the student.
There's a movie that
serious consequences.
We really enjoyed. We watched a lot when our grandkids were little. I think our kids were still in. It was called Center Stage, and it was about the New York Ballet or something. It was just a competition to be a ballet and whatever. So one of the reasons why one of our granddaughters is all balleted up, that was, it had a big impact on her. And there was a star character, a lead in one of the things that just, she was the best and so on. She just didn't dig it. I'm not, it's not making me happy. I'm ill. I'm always dieting. It's just, I'm not living a full life. And I thought this is what you wanted. Now this is what you wanted, kind of thing. And the only thing that I said, I knew the fruits of it, playing team sports and stuff and everything. And games are fun and you're motivated and you want to I'll really put the effort in the game. Practice, it's practice. Do wind sprints, I'll go 30%, jogging. I went so fast. I never got on my kids about winning, not winning. We had one when they were Pee Wee football, that Pop Warner or something, and it was it lost like every game. I don't know if they won a single game, but the parents were so cool. It was all about, they were like 6, 7, whatever, but it sparked a love of the game. And they had fun, and the families had fun, and we all, hey, somebody just scored a point. Woo! It was so beautiful. And it was so rewarding for the kids and them and so on. They knew they had the support structure, the little football community. Everything, it was all positive experience. It's better to win than not. But, I think you got one in there. So I feel sorry for the other team. But the later on, they go to be state champions and so on. My sons. I know the power of having a team. And so sports, I just wanted them to practice hard. I go, when they do the wind sprints, you're committed. This is how you know. You're the top 5 of all 20 whatever kids. You're top 5. Because even the fastest is jogging. If you can't beat the fastest jogging, you got some problems, okay? You shouldn't be out there. So I'm going, do your best in practice. That, and I'll support you and go give whatever. You go be a slacker, So that was a benefit and a stat, about as tiger mommy as I got. I really made that a thing. I don't care what your capability, but it's effort for your team and commitment to your family, and your name and your reputation, all that kind of crap. So that was really the only push that I did, other than being respectful and let me know where they went.
And I want to say, I want to say there is scientific sort of data to back that up, and I'm not going to cite studies and whatever off the top of my head, but
everybody gets
I have heard many times. Well, I have heard many times that the most, in a sense, demotivating thing you can do, for example, for a very bright child who's really good at math or whatever, the worst thing you can do is just to say, oh yeah, good job, you're smart, whatever, because those children will not apply themselves. They will not learn how to study or apply themselves. They will just coast, and they will not it will not improve their lives. Versus if you give praise specifically to the effort that they make, more so than the results, not the, oh, you got an A, that means you're good. No, you studied. I saw you taking the time. You did that very well. You were very diligent. You had all your notes, blah, blah, blah. Good job. And that results in a better outcome in the long term because children learn to associate the effort with the results rather than the results themselves. So I think that's an important part of it. But ultimately, this does come back down to the parenting question, because now that I'm thinking about it, for me personally, what would I want for my children more? For my son to be the best computer programmer in the world, because he's interested in computer programming right now, so he's taking programming lessons, whatever. He's going to be the best programmer in the world and da-da-da, and live a horrible, miserable existence that he doesn't like, or to be happy with what he does and not be the greatest who ever lived at something. And the answer in a heartbeat, I want him to be happy. I want him to live a good life that he wants to live. It's not about achieving a certain result. That isn't the metric that I would use to measure my child's life.
What is your metric?
You know, yeah, I'm just really starting to think about that. What will be the metric? Because again, they're 11 and 8. I think I can't possibly have a metric for their life at this point. But I guess at some point. Well, I think my metric might be something along the lines of, you know, thanks, Dad. I had a great childhood, or something like that. That will be my. It's not about the specific result. It is about the appreciation of the time that we have together. And I know that's, it's not a satisfying answer, but there's something about that. It's more about the experience than it is about.
This is my main goal. That my kids let me play with my grandkids. I'm allowed to, come over and watch them and take them places and everything.
Yeah.
They're a little bit more skittish about if Donna's not with me, because I'm driving. You're not allowed to text when the kids are. So that's a rule, man. No texting, no nothing, no distraction. You got the kids in the car. Gotta put it on myself anyway. But the metric that we use for the kids, we made from the very beginning. We wanted to make sure they understood we were raising children to be good parents, so that we could be grandparents and not have to raise our grandkids.
Yeah.
This is which incorporates a whole bunch of things. You're gonna have a semi-traditional family house and take care of and whatever, and we're not worried about them, and we get to be grandparents. That's my win. Just saying. Oh yeah, the other thing.
Yeah.
I go, what?
Now that you say that, I realize that is one of the metrics I've been thinking about. I've talked to my children about what kind of parent they want to be and what parent they will be in the future. And that is that really is the sort of the long-term goal. Can I raise them to be functioning adult human beings who can start their own families? That will be the metric. But for me personally, as a father, my metric will be, if they want me in their lives after they grow up and move out, if they still want me in their lives, they still want to have a relationship with me, that's me. Like, oh, okay, I was a good father. Yay. So
I think you'll probably beat the trend, but it seemed to me it was about when they're 25 years old. By the time they're 25, they're kind of starting to, you're not as stupid as they thought you were, Yeah. And by the time they start having kids and they're going through puberty, it's like, oh my God, I'm going, so it was the one thing that I think that we didn't talk about that I know was an impact. I mean, though it wasn't talked about, but I know it was an impact. The children are branded, they're imprinted with how the mother and father get along. How I treated Donna, how she treated me, how she responded, what she kept, but it really was me. I was to blame, patriarchal, you butthead, intimidating. And I know it was. That's why the spanking thing was not such a thing for me. It never was when I was a kid. I mean, didn't like it, but that was kind of the point. But, it was the intimidation, the threat, the anger, the kind of, and it wasn't so much that it was really felt as much as it was demonstrated. It was a snarling wolf alpha male, come man, you're a little dog too. So it was, we can't break away from the influence of the relationship between the parents. You see my point? Well, you got any comments?
Yeah. Just what you're saying there just reminds me, the only times that I can really remember my dad having that kind of anger was when the remote control went missing. And he would just get so angry and he'd be tearing up the whole living room looking for the remote control. And to this day, I remember those scenes. Like, they stick out in my mind. Like, wow, my dad was really angry about that. Or, occasionally, I remember there was one time we had some kind of, like, we were on a road trip and we had water in the back seat. I can't remember. There was, like, we had some kind of cooler or flask or something. Anyway, it spilled on the seat. It was literally just water. But I remember my dad getting so angry and cleaning it up. He wasn't angry at us. He wasn't like, but just the experience of that. Oh, this is, male anger essentially imprinted on me at that
all
time.
roided up. This is and then we get into this, aspect of it is that I started thinking about this more. The reason I was thinking it was going to be a thing is because we've gone through what happens when you take, masculinity out of a society or attack it at least. Because I remember I was doing shows back in 9, 10, 2009, 2010. There was a guy named Glenn Sachs. And what he would do every year, on a regular basis, we'd had him on, over the years. And he was an advocate for divorced fathers, that, the crazy back crap wife, drug addict, whatever, just by, tradition, the judges just give them custody of your kid. What the crap was that? Why do you think I divorced her? So he was a big advocate for fathers being treated equally in custody kind of things. Now, he wasn't about breaking the law or stealing the kid or doing it. You got to go through the, it was a cultural change that he was going for. And he would come on and he would show all these Super Bowl commercials. This started back 8, 9, around in there, 10. And it was all these commercials that were denigrating he's a stupid buffoon guy, the patriarch, them and his buddies, they don't know better. Mom knows best. It was kind of the beginning of this USAID crap. And the CI kind of targeting change is everything that we knew was going on. It was intentional. They were going after the family. They were going after, the masculinity. It's toxic masculinity. Teach your, girls to shave. Your boys, whatever. And I'm going, can't keep track of it. Glad I didn't. Yeah. So this is an attack. It's intentional. And if we can understand the secret sauce of what makes a complete future human being with ethics and principles that can understand this life of abundance and enjoy it and not be victims of it, we need to know what that is. Well, you have a lot of religious texts, a lot of, cultural references, a lot of stuff. And what I found is that Google didn't have a lot of them on the first page. And I was going, this traditional kind of, they're programmed as they always have been.
Yeah.
So I'm just, you sons of bitches, it's on purpose. Yeah. So we need to talk about it.
Well, okay. This brings up a whole other topic that's incredibly foundationally important to everything we're talking about, is human nature and what that means, and to the extent to which it's malleable and manipulable and
so
flexible.
Life's all about eating and sex, James. Eating and sex. That's it. And not dying from being too cold or something.
Well, I'm not an anthropologist, but it would be interesting to come up with the absolute bare basic bottom line of every culture has this, and come up with a list of what is absolutely every single human culture that ever comes up will have this and this and this. And then to interrogate whether that every single thing on that list is necessary and will always be, or whether we can envision a society it isn't. Because the first thing I know, most of the feedback to our conversation, even amongst our audience, will be anarchism, freedom, that's pie in the sky nonsense. It's never existed in human society. It never will. And I'll go, well, actually, in Iceland 1,000 years ago, and people will go, screw that. That's, you're just talking tall tales. No, in human history, people will always organize in hierarchies in this way. There's always the alpha male. There will always be this structure. There will always be violence. There will always be force. And so we have to teach our children about that. And the best way is to give them a good pounding when they do something wrong. This is the way it is. This is the way it has always been. This is the way it will always be. Is that true? I mean, that is absolutely what a certain section of the audience will definitely argue if you try to suggest that there are different ways of being a parent or anything else.
It brings to mind, there was a book when I was on vacation as a kid. I must have been 12, you know. And I always get some science fiction book, a little Pulp Fiction at the gas, whatever. And it was called Then Beggars Could Ride. I'm like, you know, I looked it up, you know, years ago, see if it was even there, if I remember the title right. It was, if wishes were horses, then beggars could ride. Well, I didn't understand, you know, I didn't hear that, or I heard it, but I didn't know what it means. But the book's name was Then Beggars Could Ride. So the implication was, you know, if wishes were horses. Well, the whole book was about a future to where you chose, in a world of abundance, you chose what world you wanted to live in. Did you want to live in the roaring 20s? Did you want to live in ancient Rome? It's like a Westworld thing. Well, what happened was,
Right.
Did you choose to be the slave or the guy being carried by the slaves? And why would you pick one or the other? Was there a slave union? You know, you only had to work so many hours a day, or, you know, how did that work? And they called them mims, like mimicries, okay? So the sailing ships that didn't have to have, you know, hydrocarbons or whatever, they're big sailing ships, cargo, and the guy just like being a cargo ship pirate of whatever. Of course, it had carbon fiber hull, had Kevlar sails, you know, that kind of crap. As it went on, it was interesting to me, all these different cultures that this guy had left to go, and finally he became one of the techs, like in Harrison Bergeron, you know, he's one of the controllers and all that kind of crap. But on his way, he found, you know, different polygamous Mormon communities. He found, you know, the Amish, the this, the that, the Romans, that, you know. And then there was the Navajo Hopi, one of them, Native American. They have a matriarchy. So you like the Amazonian, you know, women, whatever. So I'm not stuck on it being toxic masculinity, but that is probably what's going to happen, you know. And I'm wondering if that is better or worse. If we had a female president, we wouldn't get any wars. Kamala wouldn't have started World War III. So, you know, I'm wondering, with this kind of, you know, look at the future of abundance, that we're going to be able to select an intentional community or a non-intentional community, unintentional community, and go to space and space station. There's so many options. Because what freedom is, just the options. To prepare for that, do we, you know, let men compete in women's sports? No, I mean, do we have, you know, focus on masculine male behavior and women behavior, and emphasize roles for us in the future as a better way of raising children, or what, you know, allow intolerances for whatever. But I'm like, is there a secret sauce?
Okay. Well, Ernie, doesn't this come down to the principles, the core principles that are the foundational, fundamental part of Declare Your Independence and who you are and everything that you say? Is there some sort of, should we have a government agency come in and tell people, no more toxic masculinity nonsense, that kind of DEI crap. No, now everyone has to do this. And yay, you know, I was sick of that stuff, so now I'm glad the government is coming in and telling people what to do. Or can this, I mean, we cannot control the greater cultural conversation. This comes down to the question. I mean, first of all, let's bring up the conspiracy reality. We live in a completely mediated world that for the last century at least, probably more than that, is completely saturated with this mass media that is telling us how to think and what to think all the time, that is owned by a handful of corporations that have a board of directors who are all going to Bilderberg and everything, that are trying deliberately and with malice aforethought, trying to plan a future neo-feudal slave state in which we're just worker bees at best. So there's this whole apparatus around us. What is our so how do we defend ourselves against that? We elect Trump, and he'll come in and smash the bad guys and use the power of the state in the good way that we like. Or is there another way to do this? And if there is, again, I think this isn't going to be the overnight sort of solution that's going to come about. It's going to be the process of raising the next generation to not listen to Trump or anyone else and to come up with their own structures about how they govern their own lives. Is that pie in the sky nonsense thinking? There will always be these hierarchical structures. We live in a mass media world. There will always be people in control of the media that are telling you what to think. So we better have the right guys in the position of power to fight back against the bad guys in the positions of power. Is there any other way we can imagine it?
You know, that's what they're I always felt. I remember having a debate with Stefan Molyneux that was moderated by Kokesh. And it was on religion. His point was, if you believe in the fairy, whatever, Santa Claus, you're too stupid to be libertarian and free, and that is the basis of you're an idiot. And I'm just like, wow. Good. Tell libertarians, voluntarists, whatever, anarchists, don't read that book. I mean, you're not allowed to think that way. It's like, wow, that's you're already starting behind the eight ball. So it was it was interesting. It's online somewhere. Yeah. But what it used to be is you'd have join the Girl Scouts, join the Boy Scouts, and then that's what was targeted intentionally. Okay, this was a coordinated attack. This was a decision. This is what we're going to find out with all these programs and the money that they start uncovering with United. Because U.S. aid doesn't stand for aid. It stands for, I don't know, slinging CIA's opinion
Agency
around the
for
world.
International Development.
Yeah, what I said.
But it's regime change. That's what it is.
It's whatever suits them. Right. So this is it used to be you would join the Boy Scouts, and I remember in Red Dawn there was a scene to where we get invaded by Russian proxy, Cubans, all that kind of crap, and they go look at the Boy Scout list and the this that and the it's your paramilitary youth organization, the Boy Scouts and everything, and that's kind of how foreigners would perceive it, and maybe that's what their original intention was, good little drones, but it was at least I remember my father being upset by all the Christian references, and it being a thing of faith, which is kind of how it started. Well, then that got all trannied up, and then it went to I can't remember what they called them. It was through your church. They had like Boy Scout church, and that was all around the country. So there's always been an effort to try and have basic fundamental skills like Jay Noon's man camp. It's a man camp. Now, of course, a bunch of teenage girls and teenage mothers and fathers bringing their teenagers there, and the girls came too, and they're banging out horseshoes or whatever at Pork Fest and kind of thing. And it is a desire for this, so they always couch it in that. We want to give wilderness training to your kids. We want to build self-confidence by them doing zip lines. We want to, and then we indoctrinate them. Then they come home with purple hair and rainbow, whatever, So this is, all these things are targeted. All the more reason why we've learned that they have to be local and closer to the family and the local community as you can get. Bob Anderson has been really doing a lot of work on CAP, Civil Air Patrol, because he's a pilot, he's got a plane, and so he's in the high schools all the time teaching these kids. And he goes, look, they don't have a home.
Wasn't that where they got Oswald?
Really?
I'm pretty sure he was in Civil Air Patrol with a couple of other shady CIA people.
It's definitely hooked up with the Air Force. That was another thing. The recruitment numbers coming out today are, what is today? It's February 5th, 2025 in the evening. And, what time it is where you're at. But it is recruitment is just shot up since December. Because America, America. We got rid of all the not so American. What kind of American are you? We're Americans. So this is a good thing, a bad thing? They were going, this is how we went down the dark side to begin with? What do you think?
Well, you'll forgive me for not getting too excited about the recruitment drive that's going on right now. But hey, at least that cannon fodder will be directed wisely over to Gaza to clear out those pesky Palestinians and not start World War III in the Middle East, guys. That's not what Trump, Prince of Peace, Nobel Peace Prize winner is going to do, right? Having said that, whatever. That's a whole political kid. But back to the point. No, what you were talking about that the world of abundance where you get to choose, what era, what place, what idea you want to live in. That to me speaks to the voluntarist idea, right? Again, the point of voluntarist world is that it is not all the way that I would want to live. There's going to be anarcho-capitalist version, there's going to be communist version, and there's going to be all sorts of different anarcho-primitivists and all sorts, and you know what? There might be a group of people that decide, no, we like democracy and we want to set up a democratic republic in this way. Okay, voluntarily, sure. That's the point of voluntarist world, right? There will be people living in different ways.
Which was the promise of this country. That's my point.
Well, okay, but now we get to the real question, which I think, again, brings us back to the Generation Next question. So, there will be different communities with different standards and different ideas and different cultures, and there will be polygamist Mormonville, right? And there will be all sorts of weird things that, are these wrong ways of living? What if in voluntarist world, well, here's the community where we abuse our children, like literally, like sexually abuse children. Is every other community in voluntarist world just going to go, well, that's them. That's their code. That's the way they've chosen to live. Well, did the children choose to live that? But who gets to say? I mean, it's the parents own their children's bodies, right? I mean, clearly there is a point at which, no, if we believe there is actual morality, then there is a point at which, no, not everything is allowable. But then who gets to decide and in what way? And this is where the messiness of human history comes in. Voluntarism is that great idea, but there's a whole lot of niggly details once you start drilling down on it.
Having lived in the South, in Central Florida, and, travel around the South when I was a young kid, it was not uncommon to see a young, 13-year-old getting married in Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, whatever, what was his name? Jerry Lee Lewis. Married his 13-year-old cousin or some crap. Yep. This is common knowledge in, the South, but it was kind of and you get things like the Mormons going to Salt Lake from the middle, and how you get polygamy started to take care of the families, all the, men that were killed, at least that's their reasoning. So then you have, so much diversity, and I've gone and visited a lot of things. Don't get into it, but it is that diversity of individuals, diversity of culture, diversity of religions, families. That was the freedom of conscience, the freedom of worship, the freedom of assembly, the freedom of speech, the first enshrined of freedom was an understanding of this. This was the important part. Oh yeah, and them guns to make sure that first thing holds up. So what was the purpose of government? Was to provide the freedom for this. When does government come in? And this is when you first started off. I meant to write this down. The rights you have are the rights that you can defend. I've had this discussion a gazillion times, and you go back and forth, and that's the pro-life thing. Well, it's a parasite on my body, and it's my body, and I don't want it. Means nothing. Conception, maybe where life begins, but when does government jurisdiction start? Is it at the birth canal? Is it when it's in my body? Really? Uncle Sam is, have the filthy, stinking fist of Uncle Sam or China inside my womb to say I can't have the baby, or I have to, have the baby, or, blah, 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 blah. So I've had this discussion, and the one that really hit home was a friend. He would go, yeah, you just throw him in the canal until you have a boy, because he had the one-child policy, that kind of thing. So you have all these bad incentives, government forces. So I'm not going to government involved in anything. So you have to look at this stuff that what would Jesus do? What do I want government to do? So it's so nuanced down to what are you willing to do? I'd rather be, judged by 6 than carried by 1, that kind of thing. What happens when you had the intention of the way the jury was supposed to be, of your peers that go, in Texas, I remember there was a law that said, it basically said he deserved killing. Yeah, but you did. Yeah, but he deserved killing. Not guilty, So this sense of justice that the people get to decide, and not some king, not some four-way, whatever, not some, that you're judged by
common
your community.
Law versus the law. Yeah, common law versus the idea that law is written down by some lawmaker somewhere. Yeah, exactly. I think that is the way that a voluntary society would function, is through common law. Having said that, I think you avoided the hard question. Is there an absolute good and evil or not? Is everything relative?
It's certainly relative in the perception of the child, and that has an impact. I think what I'm looking for is a common solution, and I think I might have discovered it, or at least got a partial answer to it. I knew my parents and my dad, as weak as I thought he was, and what I, didn't benefit from his, just his anger, and his, it was one of the reasons he had, but he was a deputy sheriff and a city councilman, so that, yay, so let's give these guys badges. But
I wouldn't in a million years have guessed that you were at a deputy sheriff.
Oh yeah, no, man, I got stories.
That's crazy.
You gave him a badge and a gun.
Okay.
Oh my God! So it had an impact on me. A lot of the kind of the shiny. It was just a shiny badge. It's like shiny badgers, And I'm thinking that the common denominator for having the best chance of a non-psychopathic, sociopathic, pathic-y all over and everybody, is that they did what you said. That you have the confidence, you have this the security, and you have insecurity that you're not in a supporting net of love. If you have that, be it the grandma, whatever, it's, the aunt, what you call it, the whatever, if you have that, you can suffer a lot of things. I saw the movie J.D. Vance, a hillbilly, whatever the heck it was, and it was just story of a story. I mean, propaganda, I don't care. I think, who did it? It was Clint Eastwood did it or something, but anyway, so this was just family experiences of whatever. Where's the support? Is it a sister? Is it nobody? Is it your friends? It's your hoodlum other friends that are damaged, come from broken homes or whatever. Is it the state? Is it the military? Right. I've known a lot of people go into not this military or whatever we've been dealing with. I have no idea how much that's screwed up. But, that they were lost and they were looking for something. They didn't get it. They weren't having it. They weren't whatever, just something. And the military fixed them. That is a common thing, that they got disciplined, they realized their capability, they got competent at something, they reduced their fear level, they had the capability of protecting themselves, blah, 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 blah. So I'm going, there's something there too, because they know how to break men down, build them up in the drone they want them, whatever. So I'm looking for what the solution is. So I wanted to have a conversation with James Corbett. And the solution he gave us is an emotional support structure of family and community and loved ones. So is that, you think, a secret sauce? What do you think, James?
I don't think it's so secret. I think, and also, I don't think it's the one size fits all solution for everything, but it is, I think that's the absolute baseline bedrock of a solution. There's not going to be a solution that doesn't incorporate that, right? So yes, I would say whatever we might disagree on details of this or that among ourselves, amongst communities, amongst regions, whatever, there will be different ways of raising. But yes, if if we could just get to the baseline level of humanity, the baseline, everyone has a loving support structure, that would, honestly, I know people talk about this, but I truly believe that would solve so many of the big world problems that we see on a daily basis, right? That would solve a lot of them. Not all of them, because I still believe that there is psychopathy and things that truly there is no solving. But having said that, the vast majority of... Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you're in my family. They can find us at Hillary Clinton's village. It takes a village to raise, a family. But so differentiate what you just said to something like that. Who's in charge? You got to make that what you just said, which I totally agree with, by the way. They're going to go, see, it takes a village with this here whip. Make the comparison.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, look, no idea that has that widespread cachet is out there because it is just totally 100% made up out of whole cloth. I mean, there is a truth to it that it is more than, you've used for example, your use of the word self-sufficiency, getting your children to be self-sufficient. Yeah, I understand what you mean in the context you mean that in, but does that mean like you literally want these children to be, living out in the woods on bugs and rainwater, capable of, living by themselves?
I don't want to have to send them a check.
Part of self-sufficiency. Well, part of self-sufficiency means making them capable of living in community and living in the larger world, right? So there is a community aspect to this, and that's the thing that the predators, the collectivist predators will prey on. Yes, you see, you need community. Therefore, the community owns your children. And I will have to dig up that quote, but there was that whatever MSNBC talking head. They did some little like promo commercial or something, and she was talking about that concept. We have to get rid of this idea that parents own their children and start to realize that we all own your children. Or something. It was some crazy quote like that. I don't want to misquote it, but that was the sense
it was about along that line.
So yes,
this is a mantra.
Clearly there is a line there that obviously we don't want to cross because the predators will play on that. But having said that, there is a truth to the fact that you have to live in community with other people. It isn't just about you and your children. It is about the broader cultural milieu that you're placing your children in, and the way that you introduce them to that broader culture and the way that you interact with that culture will have effects on them. As you say, I guess maybe the key word for the conversation is nuance, because there's a million different things to talk about and hash out here.
There's always...
But yeah, I would say the baseline is... support structure. Yeah,
it's how many libertarians can dance on the head of a pin. That's always what it comes down to. And one of them is Mark Victor would always bring that up as a criminal defense attorney. He'd go, well, in this community over here, they rape 9-year-olds. That's culture. You good with that? You have a law. You're not going to have. You're just going to turn your head. Not going to do it. What are you going to do? These are important questions to ask yourself, but I am at the point to where I'm starting to realize it always winds up being somebody, an individual, and with the mechanism that we had, where you were judged by people that weren't just drones of the state, and it was a cult. It start back. It's 20 years earlier, 30 years earlier. Whatever you create, the structure, the justice system, the insta justice with AI and freaking surveillance cameras everywhere, sooner or later it's going to have to manifest a standard that we impose upon ourselves willingly as a culture, and just anybody that takes out the pedophile in prison just doesn't get prosecuted, which is pretty much how it works anyway. But so I'm there.
Well. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we have to wrap this conversation up. I really should get going. But that is the note to end it on here. I think the answer to this quandary of, is there absolute good and evil? Are there things that you would not put up with? You touched on it earlier. What are you willing to do about it?
Right.
And I think that has to be part of the key to this, because It is in the ceding of your sovereignty over to, don't worry, the sheriff will take care of that. The system will take care of that. The government will take care of that. There's a child protective services for that kind of thing. I don't have to get involved in helping end that abuse. But no, in a society where nobody's looking at daddy or mommy government to come in and save the day. No, it's us. It is only us. What we do. And that will evolve into the cultural practice, the broader cultural practice of when this happens. Yeah. For example, as you say, the pedophile that gets strung up on a noose around his neck, and no one gets prosecuted for that because no one's going to send anyone to jail for that particular. I mean, that's the vigilante justice. But common law and vigilante justice, where is the line between that? And how do you start differentiating? Because the mob can be wrong as well, right? So
you bring this up. I want to
explore here.
Yeah, no, a lot more. And I want to dovetail into this. This is how I was brought up. It's Rockford Files, Columbo, 1 Adam 12. It's all these kind of cop shows, and like they got now. I mean, it was just back then. And there was this one case. It was a small town to where this guy slept with this traveling salesman, or whatever, slept with this young woman. And, they were, oh, you can't believe it. Oh, he raped me. They kill him. And a small town, nobody does anything about anything. You find out later that it was consensual. And she just said that. Didn't mean for him to kill him. They killed him, but was it justified? Well, the whole point is the programming of these types of programs that would see if you take the law into your own hands, this could happen. Are you sure? And you saw this theme over and over and over. Death Wish, Charles Bronson, Death Wish 1 through 47 or whatever the hell he did. So all of this stuff was a breakout of humanity, of people, the opinion. We're shipping all the people back to their countries and whatever the hell. It's just, it breaks through, and you have this, the people supportive of an idea. But it's always, what I think the mistake is, that somebody else gets voted in to do it for them, instead of taking responsibility for your own community, not making the mistakes, taking out the real bad guys. And there's a responsibility to your freedom, and it's taken self-responsibility, individual liberty. And we used to have slogans of that on our campaign signs. Any last thought, James?
Only last thought is, you're exactly right. The programming is always vigilante justice. Bad things will happen. The wrong guy will get, killed or whatever. But the implication of that argument is always, don't worry, guys. The government never makes mistakes. The government's always impartial, and they're always it's fine when the government does it, but when vigilantes do it, so yeah, that is an important thing to point out of the propaganda. But yeah, as I say, there's so many more things we can delve into with this. So let's keep plowing through it on our next conversation.
I really am glad. What the heck happened there? All right, we won't use any music. Go ahead. This has been a really good, important conversation that I am glad that we got in. Not too many audios. And I wanted to make sure that this is a starting point for just my curiosity and to see where this is going, because I've been through phases in my life of this before, either through the church, on television, whatever, how to raise your kids, right? And then it was a big thing about just let them run free. You don't have to worry about it, and have them watch the ABC after school special and latchkey kids of mom because it served their interest. And how about we do something that serves our interest? And what is that? Family, love, compassion, self-ownership. We can agree. Peace, guys. Thanks, James. That was an awesome conversation, man.
Awesome. Thank you. Very good conversation. Looking forward to our next one.
Good. See you in a couple weeks. Bye.
Take care.